Marty's Garden is all about compost worms, composting, farming worms indoors and out, and growing some of the most awesome food around. You can learn how by clicking the subscribe button and hitting the bell so you don't miss any of my videos.
Welcome world to the Marty's Garden Show.
So I just got back from the surf, guys. Great fun hanging out down the beach. You just got to love it when you can get in the water. But I thought I need to give you guys an update on what's going on in the worm cave, because I'm getting results that I didn't think would happen that quickly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the camera and give you a look along the rows in the worm farms and show you what's going on. It's pretty interesting stuff. All right, let's get the camera here. And the first worm farm. Now this worm farm, it's only got one tier, 1,000 worms, and just the normal bedding that come with the worms that I got. And so what I'm going to do now, bit of movement there on the camera, guys, sorry. What we've got in here is tea tree. So this is paper bark, right? And as you know, worms love paper and stuff. And I just thought they might like to get into this after doing some different trials in the hungry bin, and they seem to really be like hovering around it, around the mat. And I put a bit of chicken manure under it as well, and you can see all these castings around here, right? So they're really getting into this material and enjoying it. And these mats, Hessian bags, they really make a huge difference. Much better than newspaper, I believe. But you know, both are good. Probably need to run some trials against newspaper and Hessian. Let me know if you'd like to see that in the future. So we'll move into the second worm farm here. And this is the one that has just the coffee and sawdust bedding. Now, what's interesting is, right, there was, again, 1,000 worms, and this wasn't really broken down properly. And they've moved into this area, which means they're fairly happy with it. You can see there's a worm there. And as you dig through it, I actually was in here earlier, and there's another little tiny worm there. I dug through this area early and sort of disturbed them a bit, so they might have went down. But what I'm finding is you can really wet this down a lot, because the carbon's just still sucking up that water, and there's not as much moisture throughout. And they're actually burrowing around the outsides, around the edges, which is pretty interesting. And if we lift up underneath it, you'll see there's a fair bit of action going on. They're eating along the bottom of it, where there's more decomposition going on. So there's more microbes and things, and the breakdown system. And so they're actually getting into that, and so they're not too worried about it being the material that it is. So it could actually be a type of worm bedding, sawdust and coffee compost. And we'll move into the third bin. Again, 1,000 worms, Hessian blanket in the maize worm farm. Now this is compost from my compost pile, which I believe will be the best overall one. A bit of banana there that I put there. And you can see they're digging through it. They're quite enjoying it. And they've moved up from the bottom tier where there's like the worm bedding and the cocoa peat. And they seem pretty happy. And if you keep the blanket nice and wet, they get into it. And again, you can see little castings getting through all this material here. You see the little dots where they're moving through it and starting to get all caught on the blanket. And I'm finding that in the mornings, they're more active in these worm farms. Now, the garage is really good because I'm able to keep a more of a stable temperature. Now, we're going to move into the fourth worm farm here and have a look inside. This is all just carbon. Now this is the most interesting one because it's basically just all wood chip and leaves and sticks and twigs, and little bit of chicken manure thrown in with the mat. Now, there's dry spots all through this, right? Heavy dry spots. You dig through it, you can see that it's dry. That's really dry. And around there's wet parts. And so it's pretty interesting. They travel along the areas where the wet zones are and go straight for that food. See, there's where the chicken manure is. You can see a bit of dolomite sort of through there. And so they're actually imitating like being on the forest floor, which is really, really interesting. And they sort of avoid those dry patches. See, there's like another dry patch there that I'm digging through here. And every time I add water, that's sort of moistening up. And a bit of sort of chicken manure, as you can see there, starting to break down a little bit. They'll come in as that gets more moisture. They'll come and start feeding on that. And if we move down to the bottom tier, where there's the moisture really locked in, this is where they are. And you can see they're moving up and down through the system already because they're dropping all the castings and moving all that material through the new layers, which is pretty cool. I can't really dig in there because I've got one hand on the camera and one hand on the worm farm. So we'll get the lids back on that and we'll move across. I had to actually remove one of the worm farms because it was leaking all over the ground. I lifted one of these buckets up here that was holding, there was all worms under it, and so bit of a problem. Here's the underground worm farm, doing quite well as well, full of castings, and we'll be ready to harvest that pretty soon. Bit of food there in the centre, some worms moving around, and they're really enjoying being in that bucket. Now there's not as much surface area, so you don't get as much decomposition, but this is a pretty good worm farm overall, pretty happy with it. When we empty it out and have a look, which hopefully we'll do in the near future, be interesting to see how many worms actually in there, because I've got no idea, to tell you the truth. And here's another worm farm, the Worm Cafe. It's on a can of worms, this is called, sorry. Worm Cafe was the one I had to take out because it was leaking. So I've doubled up on the blankets here, and this is really interesting, right? So in the centre is worm cast, a big ball of worm cast, and all around the outside is the coffee compost. And I wanted to see if they would start moving around into these outside zones, and I've been wetting it down a lot, and you can see here if I sort of squish it around, it's look, there was a worm in it. So they're moving through that coffee compost now, and it goes to show that it does work as a bedding. But I wanted to put the worm castings in the middle because they're familiar with that, and just see what they're doing here. So we'll grab that, and look, they're not in there so much. They've moved out of there. There's not a lot of food. So I would say they're scouring around on these outside edges here. Yep, so there you go. There's not a lot. There's only 150 worms in here. So they're scouring around the outside. And if you were looking at both me to dig in and just see thousands of worms, that ain't happening. These are all brand new worms, and I'm going to add more to this farm over time. So it's really a trial to see how that coffee compost will go. So if you break down wood dust, sawdust with coffee and put it in turn into worm farms, how well it will go. And so that's really interesting stuff. 5 worm farms doing quite well and all doing different things.
Lila, I sing this song for you. You're beautiful, even when you're down. You know this, and never talk yourself out of it. Lila, it's all inside your head. Eleanor Roosevelt said, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. So let your light shine without holding it in. Love yourself and don't give in. And when you feel the harmony, smile with the sons of the galaxies. perfect like you are, a sublime creation, but you play yourself small. Such a waste of your beauty, girl. Lila, the key to it is you. Turn it when you feel it's true. And never look back, and let your light shine without holding it in. Love yourself and don't give in. And when you feel the harmony, smile with the suns and let your light shine without holding it in. Love yourself and don't give in. And when you feel the harmony, smile with the sons of the